Dang, Calvin, you're looking pretty spiffy in that outfit. I'm just kidding. I came back from an event and I was in this outfit and I thought I'd just do the video in this shirt because I really like this color. I think it's very nice. Anyway, I really love books. I love reading them. I love gaining new perspectives on the world, and I love trying to pick up information that can help me improve a lot of different areas of my life. However, I noticed very recently that I had a bit of a problem, and this problem revolved around how I gather some of the information from these books and how I actually apply it to my life. So I realized that as I was going through reading a lot of the books that I've read very recently, and recently I've actually been getting into a lot of books on personal development and figuring out how some of these books can help me in, different areas of my life. And they were great books. I've enjoyed reading them. I really learned a lot. However, the problem was that a few months after finishing the book, or even a couple years, I would go back to that book and not be able to remember anything from it. And really, that sort of led me to the conclusion that the way I was reading these books was a little bit ineffective. I wasn't extracting out the information in an effective way so that I could make use of it and put all of these personal development tips and tricks into use. Now, very recently, I watched two different videos on YouTube, one from Matt Diavella and the other one from Ryan Holiday, and in both of these videos, they talked about a system that helped them improve their reading and how they could use that system for effective note taking and being able to apply that stuff in their life in an effective way. And that sort of inspired me to set out and try to figure out a system that I think would work for me as I embark on more book reading journeys, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. Ryan Holiday is one of the best-selling authors, and he authors a lot of different books. Courage is Calling, Stillness is the Key, and several others. And the interesting thing about his methodology for reading books and just extracting information out of them is pretty interesting. So he sort of narrows it down into three different areas. The first is reading and taking notes. The second is revisiting the book after you've completely read it. And the third is organizing all of the information that you've gathered into different pillars or buckets or themes that relate to you in your life. So step one is when he picks up a book, he goes through that book with pens, with highlighters, with stickies, and he is writing all over the book. He is absolutely tearing this book apart. He's writing in the margins, he's highlighting things, and he's just doing everything he possibly can to make sure he has all of the main points and the main ideas highlighted and available to him. The second part of his method is actually to revisit that same book. So once you've read the book one time and you have all your notes in the pages and in the margins, and this is sort of the hardest part where you have to go back to the book, start from page one again, and then sieve through all of the information that you've written, that you've highlighted, and try to make sense of it. And then finally, the third step is to organize that information. So once you've read the book, once you've revisited all of your notes, now you need to take all of that information and organize it in a way that makes sense for you and your life and, of course, your brain. Your brain is a huge data processing center. So every single day we are thrown tons of information from people, from videos, from books, lectures, podcasts, music, etc. And your brain has to do a lot of work to try to sieve through all of that information. Now, what's interesting about Ryan's process is that once he has read the book, once he has taken the notes, once he has revisited his notes, he then goes a step further and takes those notes and tries to organize them and separate them and categorize them into different pillars or buckets that are important to him. So he might write down certain notes for health, for finance, for fitness, etc. And he does this by writing all that information down on postcards or index cards, and then he categorizes them, which is pretty intense. But it's a system that works for him, and it makes recalling a lot of that information a lot quicker and a lot more effective over the long term. So after hearing about their stories, I wanted to come up with a system that would be very effective for me as I'm reading books and just learning more about the world. And I'll be trying out this system that I've developed on this book, Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. Now, before you say anything, yes, I know the title is a little cheesy, or it might be a little overly dramatic, and the cover, you have Tony over here, he's staring longingly into your eyes. Okay, let's not judge a book by its cover. I've heard a lot of really good things about this book, And as Jim Rohn once said, you have to be smart enough to pick up a book or just resources in general and go through them, and then you have to be even smarter enough to figure out what is the information that is most valuable to you from that book and what isn't. And so you have to be able to kind of sieve through all that information and see what applies to you and what doesn't, right? It's not about trying to gain every little thing out of this book, but really it's just kind of a guide of, how do I extract out the information that is most important to me and sort of most fits a lot of the pillars and the values in my life. Okay, so inspired by Ryan Holiday's note-taking system, I thought it would be cool to try out a system of my own using this book. So I haven't started it yet, but I will after this video. And I want to use this system to see how effectively I can read this book, extract out the information, and then apply all of that stuff to my life. Now, I actually prefer digital books. I think they're just easier, but there was something unique about physical books, right? You have this thing in your hand. It's this very tangible thing, and you can write on it, you can bend pages, you can do all that sort of stuff. Now, because I'm doing this experiment and practicing this system with a physical book, I needed some supplies. So I grabbed my keys, I drove to my favorite store, I went into the store and I went into my favorite aisle with all the highlighters and all the colors, and I picked up a few supplies. I swear, Target has some kind of spell that they put on you when you walk into the door. You go in for one thing and you walk out with a bag full of stuff. So I came here for highlighters, and I got this cereal. I got 2 boxes of my favorite tea. I got dark chocolate covered almonds, toothpaste, mouthwash, what else? This gelato's kind of good. It's really good. And finally, the thing I came here for, highlighters. So these are the highlighters. They're Sharpie. I think they're pretty cool. So let's go figure out what to do with them. So I have those highlighters right here, the Sharpie highlighters, and then I got a few other things. Obviously, I got my little pen bag here. I have a bunch of different colored pens, and it's not a crazy amount, but they're really cool pens. And then I also got these stickies that I want to use. These are not from Target, but these are from Daiso because I think their stationery stuff is kind of cool. So there are these little flaps that I can just paste in books, and I think all of these supplies will really help me figure out a way to really take notes a lot more effectively, and most importantly, pinpoint the information that is, really critical in this book, so I can easily go back and find it. So my goal for this system is really to read more effectively and then be able to extract out information a lot quicker and be able to retain that information for a lot longer. So I've kind of come up with a system that I think might work well for me, and my very first kind of preface or sort of note is that I'm going to be reading this book very slowly. I think that is one of the key points that Ryan makes in his video is anybody can speed read. Anybody can just flip through a book and say, hey, I've read it, it was great, it was awesome, blah, 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 I'm done with it. The problem with speed reading is you're not taking the time to have a conversation with the author. And so you're really not giving yourself an opportunity to really understand what the author is trying to say. So this is going to be a very slow and methodical procedure, and it honestly just might take months because I'm probably just going to do 1 chapter a week, so I can just, focus on maybe 1 or 2 hours on a Saturday every single week because I have other things going on during the week. But then that session that I have on Saturdays, it will be a very focused one, a very in-depth read, take notes, make notes, and just go through the book that way. Secondly, obviously, I'm going to be taking notes during this whole process. So these, I have pens, and then I also have highlighters. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to use the highlighters for major themes or ideas or things that really stand out. Whereas I'm going to use pens to, one, just write notes in the margin or just make notes, but then also be able to underline sort of supplemental material. So I'm probably going to use the Sharpie for highlighting major points or major ideas in the book, and then I'm going to use pens to make sure I can underline some of the supplemental stuff, a little bit more of the minor stuff. So Sharpie is major points, whereas pen is sort of minor points. And obviously I'll use stickies to pinpoint a lot of that information so I can refer back to it very, very quickly. So that's kind of the system I want to set up for the actual note taking. Now, as I'm reading each chapter, I don't want to just take notes in the book. I want to extract out some of that information and start writing down some of the ideas and themes that come up as I'm reading that chapter. So I'm going to be using a notebook in OneNote, and each page is going to be dedicated to each chapter of the book. Now, on this page, obviously, I'm going to write things that sort of inspired me or thoughts that came up as I was reading this book, and that will be a good way to pinpoint or to connect certain values and pillars of my life to the concepts in this book. And when you can establish that sort of a relationship between all the stuff that's being presented in a book and certain pillars of your life, I think you'll end up retaining information a lot longer. Now, you'll also notice that I'm going to be writing this using my Apple Pencil and not typing it. There's been a lot of studies shown that when you write things down, you retain that information for a lot longer. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, and then the final step for the system is to organize. So once I have finished the read through and the note taking through, after that's done, I'm going to revisit all of my notes, all of the thoughts, all of the ideas that I've had, and I'm going to try to organize. And the way I'm going to organize this is really taking all of those notes, all of the ideas that I've gotten through the read through, and then try to fit them into different buckets or different categories in my life. Now, I was listening to a podcast by Jim Quick, and he presented a pretty cool note-taking idea, which I think I'll try after I'm done reading the book. And his idea of note-taking was, when you're reading a book, take a blank sheet of paper and split it down the middle. And on one side, he called it the taking notes column, and the second column was the creating notes column. So on the left side, you had taking notes, and taking notes is pretty self-explanatory. It's just anything that sticks out in the book, you write it down in that column. And then on the right side, creating notes, is all of the ideas and all of the different kind of viewpoints and perspectives you gain from that particular idea from the left column. So the left column is really a lot more methodical and logical, whereas the right side, it's a little bit more imaginative and creative. And that's how I sort of want to organize this information after I've gone through and tried to extract all that information out. Okay, and that's really it. So this is going to be a pretty in-depth process. It's going to be a pretty interesting read for this book. And my hope is that this system will help me just read a lot more effectively and be able to apply a lot of the lessons from all of these books to my life, because that's really what these books are meant to be. And I think it's obvious to say that a lot of the things might change along the process, along the way, but I think that's sort of natural and expected. I might document this journey, so I might do it on Instagram if you guys are interested. If you are, let me know down in the comments, and maybe I can start that video series on Instagram next week, so you guys can sort of see how I go through about this book and this system and see what's working, what isn't. And I think it'll be a pretty cool process. So once I'm done with this book, I'll probably make a follow-up video and sort of go through the system and share the learnings and the things that I could have improved and all that sort of stuff. So if that's something you want to see, let me know down in the comments below. And until then, I have a book to read. Okay, I'll see you guys later. Peace.